do men want?
Manifests itself in relationships, and you feel it in relationships, and they can be very powerful spiritually. And if that's what you need, that's what you should go for.
And she said, oh, I'm going to go do a sweat lodge this evening. And I begged her to take me along, and that was about 6 years ago.
Welcome to Speaking of Men. You're watching public access television from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. Joining us as a guest in the studio today is Captain Spencer Singleton of the United States Air Force. He is Chief of the Social Actions Office at our Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and today we're going to be talking about the dynamics of sexual harassment. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike.
Let's begin with just a, excuse me. Let's begin with just a definition of what sexual harassment is.
All right. Sexual harassment, in the broadest definition, is a subcategory of sex discrimination. It becomes a problem when unwanted advances, requests for sexual favors, impacts on a person's career or job, or advancement in a particular job. Sexual harassment can also take the form of people creating a negative environment for persons to work in, such as an environment where there are pin-up posters, where there are sexist jokes and comments being made.
Everybody is just there to do a job after all.
Exactly.
And, you know, I guess one of the problems in American business is that a lot of emotional problems and family problems end up in the workplace, and that costs us all a lot. Give me an idea of how, I mean, it's a big problem, and I guess the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas issue brought it to the front burner in American consciousness, but it's been going on for a while. Give me a little background on how the courts came to be involved in that.
All right. Mike, as you know, in the early 60s, women started to go into the workplace in big numbers. And when this began to happen, there was a reaction by the dominant male population in the workplace. They had another entity to deal with, i.e. the female worker. These people were going into roles that were non-traditional type roles. You had female executives, people managing, people in top positions in some of these companies and in the workforce. They weren't used to this, so therefore we had some interaction that was not conducive to the women and women getting their jobs done, and i.e. if the women don't get their jobs done as a part of that corporation or that company, the company suffers. So they began to look at sexual harassment as a form of discrimination in 1980 when the Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act was amended. It was amended and made sexual harassment an unlawful practice in employment, thereby putting the law into it and putting the courts into it.
So it took the women's movement from about 1960 to almost 1980 to get any legislative action on it.
Exactly.
And you know, I think one of the things that's interesting for us men to try to grasp, but it's a real uncomfortable situation to be continually harassed and poked fun at and denigrated, you know. Do sexual harassment laws differ from state to state? You were telling me that the EEOC sets the standards. How does that work?
Okay, the EEOC is kind of the guru, if you will, of sexual harassment and sex discrimination. They handle quite a bit of cases. People can complain directly to the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. From state to state, there's not too much of a variance on what sexual harassment is and how to go about dealing with sexual harassment. And the EEOC is, again, kind of the definitive body, if you will, on sexual harassment.
So it's pretty uniform standard nationally then.
Yes.
How about, give me you were mentioning to me that it's not so much sexual as it is a power play a lot of time on the part of the antagonist, if that's the word. Give me a couple of typical examples, if you would.
Okay, normally when we think of sexual harassment, and myself included, you think of maybe a romantic interlude that has gone sour, an individual's trying to get something going with the opposite sex, and for some reason or another it just goes sour, and you think someone has gotten mad or whatever, and then they want to file a sexual harassment complaint. Well, in most cases it's been proven by the surveys and the stats that sexual harassment is normally the product of someone trying to play out a power position on an individual and trying to make them feel uncomfortable by asking for these sexual favors and putting increased demands upon them.
So it's really not sex at all. It's just it's actually an harassment, just like it says. It's you were nice enough to bring some friends down, and you guys taped a couple of segments for us, which we're going to show you the first of right now. It's kind of a flip-flop on what you might expect in sexual harassment. So Captain Singleton and I urge you to stay with us, watch the tape, and we'll be right back.
Hello, Mr. Wilson.
How you doing?
Have a seat. From looking here at your resume, I see that you have a really good experience. You've worked with Gucci and Calvin Klein.
Yes, I have.
That's pretty impressive. How did you hear about our firm?
Well, first of all, I got quite a bit of friends in the industry, and it was through word of mouth, so to speak.
I see.
And I took the chance knowing that this company has a very good reputation, and I'm just looking to put myself in a position in a country that is a company that has the potential to reach beyond my limits in my career.
I see, I see. So tell me, what do you think especially qualifies you for this position?
Well, if you look at my resume, you can see that I have quite a bit of experience working for such designers as Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, and looking at the designs of your company, it looks like I would fit right in to what the target group that you're aiming at, looking at designing things for the young generation here, and I like the style.
Sure. Your professional experience is very impressive. I was just wondering about what other type of experience you may have.
Well, first of all, working for such big labels as Calvin Klein has given me the experience of traveling all over the world, coming into contact with different designers and different styles, and being well seasoned, so to speak. It's not as far as being limited to the continental United States, but fashion designs throughout the whole world.
Oh, well, tell me, Mr. Wilson, do you mind working long hours?
Well, I'm goal-oriented, so to speak, and if it needs to be, I will be willing to work those long hours as far as I set those goals, and if I have to.
Yeah, because at this firm, we like people who have an attitude of not minding going beyond the call of duty, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Okay. That's a really nice tie you have on. You know, when you walked in the door, I just couldn't help myself. I just thought that tie was wonderful in your hands. Do you have them professionally manicured?
Well, I take good care of myself.
Yeah, they're nice, soft, but strong at the same time. You know what I mean. Hard work. Well, what kind of relationships have you had with your supervisors in the past?
Well, I'm a all-around person. That's where I view myself. I get along with those people that I work with, my peers, and I'm very flexible. And, you know, the way I look at it, that that your supervisor is your supervisor, and whatever he gives you, that's what you should do, because he is your boss. Of course.
That's right. Flexibility. That's what we look for here at this firm. Like I said, people who are willing to go beyond the call of duty. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this interview. We will probably be giving you a call. So I think that will conclude this interview. Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome back to Speaking of Men. It's public access television from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And as you may have guessed from our last tape segment, the topic today is the dynamics of sexual harassment. We're fortunate to have in the studio with us today Captain Spencer Singleton of the United States Air Force, Chief of Social Actions Office out at Kirtland. I want to comment on that film a little bit. Kind of non-traditional as you usually see the situation.
Yes, and when we normally think of sexual harassment, we think of the normal male to female type of harassing situation. As you saw in the little clip there, we had an individual who was male being put on the other side of the spectrum and receiving some of the uncomfortable feelings and some of the uncomfortable situations that women normally go into. It's interesting to note that there's a gulf between what men feel about receiving sexual harassment versus what the women feel. There have been countless surveys that have been done, and the ones that have been done so far show that men feel, the majority of men by and large feel that they're complimented when a coworker or supervisor tries to come on to them.
That's certainly an interesting point. No matter what men would like to believe, however, women are statistically the predominant sex that's being harassed in the workplace. I mean, there is some harassment, that men receive, but most of it is women.
Right. If you look at the court cases and look at the number of complaints that have come forward, the majority of the cases are filed by women who have been harassed by men.
That's interesting stuff. Let's catch the spectrum now. We talked about sexual harassment is more a power play than about sex usually. Let's go worst case example to least case.
All right. Sexual harassment can take the form of physical abuse. It could be verbal, but at the one end of the spectrum, you're looking at capital crimes such as rape. You're looking at sexual assault, and it can go down to the spectrum of just verbal comments or verbal suggestions of a sexual nature.
What are the penalties?
Okay, penalties range. I've seen individuals fired as a result of sexual harassment. A lot of companies have had to put out big dollars, back pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars in settlements as a result of their management sexually harassing someone in the duty section. The company becomes liable for it. In the Air Force, people have been forced to retire in lieu of being given some type of punitive action in regards to sexual harassment.
That's now the Supreme Court said the cash penalty is, what did you say it was?
In 1991, the Civil Rights Act that was just enacted put kind of a cap on the settlement, the cash settlement that an individual could sue for at around $300,000. An individual can still collect in back pay, however, but as far as a cash settlement, we're looking at $300,000.
That's so it could go basically anywhere from loss of job, verbal reprimand, up to an enormous cash settlement, or on the severity of it, probably imprisonment.
Exactly.
So it's not something that American consciousness takes lightly, or the American people take lightly. I know a lot of Americans are really struggling, to get some sort of healthy approach to each other, you know, the sexes, the races, and especially with the focus on our economic struggles in America right now. You know, we really need to get it together and make it work.
You're right on target.
You know, Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill kind of brought the whole sexual harassment issue to the front burner. Got some examples of what's happening currently and maybe a little bit of look at some of the legal milestones over the years.
Right. In 1985-86 time frame, the Supreme Court actually went through some court cases, and they made some rulings that pretty much did set back affirmative action type programs and some types of legal remedies for complaints. As a result of that, women were put into a position where some of the job opportunities were not being available through the affirmative action type programs, because the courts made it very stringent for a company to show why they needed an affirmative action program. They had to show an historical approach that this has been happening for a long time.
Now, affirmative action means what exactly? Do you know?
Affirmative action has been basically, I try to break it down a little bit. It's caused a lot of hostility, and affirmative action is a program where someone does lose. Basically, it's creating a pool of people that wasn't there before. They were always there, but they weren't a part of that selected group of people. And now, with affirmative action programs, they can look at selecting some of the people that were in protected groups, such as women and your minorities, and setting aside maybe some jobs or setting some goals to try to make the environment a little bit conducive or equal to what the population is outside of the company.
Well, it certainly makes economic sense. You know, if you look at America on the cross section, you know, okay. So affirmative action put some programs in place over the years, and it's led to
women getting more opportunities in the job market and getting promoted into some of the top management positions. So in essence, the court did kind of set it back a little bit. But talking about sexual harassment, the women made some gains in the 1986, 1985 era when the court did make some of these rulings. In fact, what the court did was, in one case, they decided that it is not incumbent upon the employer to prove, the employee to prove that there was sexual harassment, that they were discriminated against. It is incumbent upon the employer, when that complaint is made, the employer has to show why it wasn't sexual harassment or why they weren't discriminating.
You know, I get the feeling, kind of departing from our agenda a little bit, I get the feeling sometimes that men just think women are out to get them and that the whole thing is made up, and it's a real issue.
It's a real issue.
It's a real issue. It's actually something that's happening, and for some reason, I know you are, because you work in the field and you're probably real aware of it because you deal with it, but I think a lot of us, we just kind of go, yeah, and it just goes, you know, one ear and out the other. You know, because it's not something that we're dealing with. It's something that we don't even think about a great deal of the time, and it's, you know, it's kind of these roles that are handed to us, and we're in situations, and you know, it's like telling dirty jokes with one of the guys at the water cooler while the secretary is trying to do her job or something.
Exactly.
You know?
And unfortunately, a lot of people feel that way, and they don't realize how important or how serious sexual harassment is until they're in the situation, where either they've been accused of it or they're on the other end of it.
Yes, that's true. Now, some companies, I know in the Air Force you guys do, in the military you do already, but some companies on the outside in the civilian sector are also starting to put together in-house, like you were telling me about a little human relations course you guys take sometimes.
Exactly. The Air Force requires every member upon assignment to their permanent duty station, and basically we're talking about when they get through all their tech schools and all their training, and now they're ready to be employed, that base that they go to, they're required to take a 6-hour block of human relations training, which includes talking about sexual harassment, briefing them on what it is and how to avoid, how to prevent sexual harassment.
You know, one of the, you know, this program is about men's issues, basically. And one of the things I've heard some men say is that as a people in America, we have to have a sense that we can heal these wounds that we have, and that we can take problems like sexual harassment and we can learn to be healthy and we can be united in it. Mm-hmm. And it's in this that will make us a people nationally. And we haven't had that since the 60s when there was a lot of, you know, the Civil Rights Act was passed, and there was, Kennedy was in power at that time or was still alive, and there was a real sense that we could heal and go forward and be strong. I think having a, I think if more companies in the private sector had a course that that employees, especially large companies, employees could take just on how to relate to one another, you know, it would be just grand stuff. We have a second of 2 tapes that Captain Singleton was nice enough to come down and stage for us in putting this little project together. And we hope that you will view this with an open mind and a bright eye and stay with us, because we will be right back.
How you doing, Willie?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. That's great. That's great.
Good.
Hey, did you watch TV last night?
No, I really didn't. I didn't see
Oh, well, you missed it. You missed it.
What I missed?
It was this video they had on late night TV.
Oh, yeah?
They probably can't show it any other time, but late night. It was about this song called "The Girls Got Back."
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can you
come
believe
on.
that?
Yeah,
I'm
come
serious. The girls got back.
Yeah, tell me more details.
Oh, it was about this, about these women, and they were in these tight sweater-type dresses.
Oh, you serious?
I'm serious, serious. Shaking it for the camera. Can you believe that?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Tell me I missed out.
You
Hey,
did.
you know that reminds me of?
What?
Mrs. Jones.
Oh,
yeah,
Mrs. Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I'm talking
the
about,
one with the
Mrs.
nice-
Jones.
The
Yeah.
one with the nice bat. Yeah.
I can understand that. I can understand that. Did you see her yesterday?
Ooh, telling me.
I think she, you know what I really think? I think she was just hired here just because of the way she was wearing that dress.
Oh,
You don't think so? You don't think so?
I'm thinking possibility.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it.
Yeah, but you saw how when she walked out?
Oh, you telling me.
How
I've
the
been looking at
supervisor
that.
was like, yeah. But I probably would have done the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm serious with a
I
body
mean,
like that.
hey, she could work in my office
I'm
any day.
serious.
Any
Anytime.
day.
Yeah, I think I might be taking some more looks at Mrs. Jones.
Yeah, you know, Mrs. Jones. Hey, when Mrs. Jones comes in today, so what's going on with her?
Hey.
Welcome back to Speaking of Men. I'm your host, Mike Rivas, and our guest today is Captain Singleton from the United States Air Force, and we were just looking at a little film that shows you basically how bad workplaces are created. Did you want to?
Sure. You know, this is one area where people often get trapped because they don't understand that creating an environment that is non-conducive to anyone getting their work done, where you have sexual harassment, sexual type activities going on, is sexual harassment. They don't understand that, and oftentimes men are the ones that get trapped into this, because going back just a little bit, in the 60s and early on, men were the dominant force in the workforce, and we pretty much still are. But a young man would go to work, and it was nothing to tell sexist jokes or off-colored jokes, or to engage in a conversation about how their date went and so forth and so on. But now, with the woman in the workplace, that can be offensive to that person. Sometimes it can be offensive to men. Even a pinup poster displayed in the workplace could be offensive to another man. So it's one of those areas where people are just not astute to understand that this is sexual harassment.
You know, we were talking a little bit about the fact that some companies are trying to put together programs in the private sector that kind of help their companies along, and of course their bottom line is they don't end up paying somebody $300 grand, you know, because of some jerk, you know, in some part of the company that was harassing women sexually. You're really not asking people to make that big a jump, are you? It's just a little attempt at a little better humanism and communications.
Exactly. What we're trying to do, and what the companies that have employed some of these programs are trying to do, is create a win-win environment, because their bottom line, as you say, is to avoid spending money needlessly, and at the same time what they're trying to do is create a profit and stay in business. And they know to do that, to optimize the environment, they have to have an environment that's conducive for everyone in that particular workplace to put out 100% of their efforts. And they're not going to do that if they're in an environment which is filled with sexual harassment.
You just hate to go to work.
Exactly.
You get up in the morning, you're going to go down there, and you got to see the same person who's going to make your life miserable.
Exactly.
It's about doing the job and making the money. If you make widgets, it's about going down there and making widgets.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's not going down there and suffering and acting out a bunch of crazy stuff. Women are mostly the victims, but men are sometimes, you said. And are the laws equally applicable either direction?
Yes, the laws are equally applicable, and men are oftentimes the receivers of sexual harassment. And there are numerous complaints on file that have been filed by men against other women, against other men for sexual harassment.
We were talking about a little bit earlier about how you became involved and it's ongoing. Tell me a little bit about the background that brought you into dealing with this specifically.
Okay, I've been in the Air Force now for approximately 15 years, Mike, and 9 of those years have been working in the field of social actions, which, if you want to relate it to the outside world or the corporate world, we're looking at an employee assistance program. Our program is broken into 2 phases. We deal with substance abuse, rehabilitation, and we also deal with equal opportunity and treatment, human relations education, which includes processing complaints related to discrimination, which sexual harassment falls into. And it's 16 weeks of school in order to get prepared for this job and continuous education.
We're down to about the last minute of this first of 2 segments on sexual harassment that we're doing. We were both, in preparing this interview, saying that what we actually have in the workplace here is an opportunity for both sexes to enter some new frontiers in male-female relationships.
Exactly. We're talking about optimizing the workforce, optimizing the production of our workforce. We want to be world competitors on the marketplace, and in order to do that, we have to rid our environment of negativisms such as sexual harassment.
I'd like to remind our viewers that they can call the number shown at the end of the program and give us some feedback if they would like. We're also would like you to watch next week for the 2nd. This is Captain Spencer Singleton. I'm Mike Rivas telling you to stand if you can, run if you have to, but don't quit. Bye-bye.